What's up YouTube, Capital G here. Today we're talking about toxic Yu-Gi-Oh! Duelists. You know what I'm talking about. That guy or gal you always see who can never take a loss gracefully, is always bragging about how much better they are than you or everyone else, or just indulges in flat out scumbag behavior like scamming people out of cards online. For the most part, none of this behavior is attractive or commendable, and it makes you come off as a colossal jerk a la Bandit Keith. Now, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with a little bit of trash talking here or there. Heck, sometimes it can even challenge and bring out the best in you and your opponent, but far too often it's pretty common to see Yu-Gi-Oh! Duelists, whether in person or online, act like total dicks. Just so we're clear, I'm in no way saying that doing any of these things makes you any less of a great or accomplished duelist, and I'm also not going to act like I'm holier than thou, as throughout my years of playing in regionals, I've done countless things that I'm about to list, but for the most part, keeping this stuff to a minimum makes everyone else around you happier. Without further ado, welcome to the top 10 signs that you're a toxic Yu-Gi-Oh! Duelist, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Hierarchy. Number 10, you won't let your opponent touch any of your cards. Let's kick the list off with something that rarely occurs, but does in fact actually happen. While it's quite common courtesy to ask your opponent before touching any of their cards, there are a few uptight duelists that won't let you handle any of them. This might be understandable if you're dueling against a small child in fear that they may bend or damage your cards, but against anyone who's over the age of, I don't know, like 10 years old, they can pretty much comprehend the value of Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards, and it's so unlikely that I've never seen it actually happen in my life. This is especially annoying when duelists simply fan out their graveyard rather than let you go through it, as it often makes the process of checking their grave significantly longer. Number 9, you think you're better because the region that you're from. This is actually a pretty recent one, and a lot of it has to do with Yu-Gi-Oh's expansion of the highest form of competition, the YCS or Yu-Gi-Oh! Championship Series. In recent years, the series has been expanded to Europe, Latin America, and Oceania, and for the most part, this has led to friendly rivalries between North America and the other regions of the world, as you often will see in games like League of Legends, Counter-Strike, Overwatch, etc., etc. However, there are those who truly believe that being from one of these regions inherently makes you a better duelist than those from other regions. While the playstyles and ideologies of each region may be different, skill level in Yu-Gi-Oh! Based solely on location 100% does not exist. Number 8, you constantly brag about your Yu-Gi-Oh! Credentials.
So tell me how it feels to be an amateur going up against the Intercontinental Dueling Champion.
I get it because I used to do this all the time. By the way, have I mentioned that I have 5 regional top 8s? That's a joke, don't call me a tool and dislike the video. But what I've learned as time has passed by, especially when I've had others do it to me, is quite frankly, nobody gives a crap. Everyone likes to feel like their hard work and competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Will eventually pay off, and premier tops are accomplishments that definitely should be respected and praised, but it doesn't mean you can go around throwing them in people's faces like it inherently makes you better than everybody else. After all, trophies rust and represent the past. They have no bearing on the present, the future, and how good you actually currently are as a duelist. Number 7, you look down on casual players. I think that every hardcore Yu-Gi-Oh! Competitive player has done this once or twice. You see that guy playing his tier 3 anime deck at table 500, just having the time of his life, and you think to yourself, why didn't you just play something better? You might have actually had a chance to top, but the thing that you don't realize is winning isn't always the #1 goal of everyone who plays the game. Almost everyone enjoys winning a duel, but there's a very good portion of players out there who would rather just have fun in a duel and play a deck that they actually enjoy rather than tryharding constantly and sacrificing their pleasure for victory. This a lot of times goes double when playing with or against your friends, as most things you do with your buddies is going to be inherently fun, so winning a lot of the times might not be all that important. For instance, I just had a live stream the other day where the most compelling, fun, and enjoyable duel was actually a mirror match where our decks consisted of 60 random cards that had absolutely no synergy with each other. I was having so much fun that in game 2, I decided to even go for a firewall pass meme play rather than actually winning the duel. I don't regret it at all. Number 6, you rule shark. Let's be blunt here, no one likes this. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a complicated and convoluted game, and it can be incredibly stressful and difficult trying to execute and think up the best plan or strategy. So when somebody immediately calls you out for making a small mistake in your play and refuses to let you correct it, it actually comes off as being a douchebag. A simple example of this would be if your opponent attacks you with a monster and you say, fine, that's good, but then less than 2 seconds you say, you know what, I'm actually going going to mirror force that attack. Rule sharking would be if your opponent refused to accept your mirror force as a legal activation there because you technically said fine, that's good seconds earlier. Despite the fact that the game state has not been damaged in any way, the player will still try to gain an unfair advantage using an underhanded technicality. This is actually so frowned upon in the Yu-Gi-Oh community that Konami has put in place official rules against this type of behavior. Number 5, you make fun of players with low skill.
I knew you were an amateur, and now I'm gonna show you how come.
Well, this is just straight up mean. Let's be real here. We all suck when we first start playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Hell, some of us have been playing the game for years and still make the simplest of mistakes all the time while playing decks that we should be familiar with. Like all sports, games, and activities, repetition and practice makes you better. Also, just think before the next time you tell your friends, oh, that guy I just dueled was so terrible, I beat him so easily. He didn't even know what X card did. Number 1, as stated before, every single person who has ever played this game at some point was completely and utter dog shit at it. And number 2, you're bragging about beating someone in a children's card game. This is not exactly the best look. Number 4, you knowingly rip people off in trades or just straight up steal cards. Oh, come on. This is just true scumbaggery. Whether it's making deals online in which you never have the intention of sending someone their cards, or you take advantage of little kids at locals with incredibly one-sided trades, this is some bullshit that you should never do. One form of it is illegal and the other is pretty much immoral. Either way, once people realize you've done it, believe me, you'll earn a very strong reputation for it, and it's one of the worst in the game that you can have. We all know Yu-Gi-Oh! Is an expensive game and a lot of high-end competitive cards can be worth a lot of money and difficult to obtain, but in the long term, you're better off finding a better way to get these cards, especially considering we've seen Yu-Gi-Oh! Players straight up get their asses kicked and end up on the likes of WorldStarHipHop.com because of this type of stuff, and then there is the countless players who've been arrested for theft. And just think about how dumb you'll look when you have to explain to your family that you got arrested for stealing children's trading cards. Number 3, you don't shake hands with your opponent after losing. This is the epitome of saltiness, and I've seen it happen constantly at countless regionals. Heck, we even see this happen in professional sports where grown-ass millionaires act like little babies. But quite frankly, no matter how savage you got luck sacked, or even if you believe your opponent wasn't the better duelist and didn't deserve to win, if you don't acknowledge their win with a simple handshake and a good game, you're the one who actually ends up looking bad. And I've been on both sides of the spectrum, those agonizing losses that you think about the entire car ride home, or the one that you shouldn't have won but somehow did and it catapulted you to the top cut. No one likes it when an adult acts like a spoiled brat. You should be graceful in victory or defeat. Number 2, you constantly tell your opponents of their mistakes after losing to them. If not shaking your opponent's hand is the epitome of saltiness, then this one is the epitome of annoying. You simply can't go to a competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Event without seeing this happen once or twice after a duel. Truth be told, it actually spawns from being salty as well. This is used all too commonly to make a Yu-Gi-Oh! Player feel better about him or herself after a loss. It's basically the Yu-Gi-Oh! Version of being passive aggressive. You acknowledge your opponent beating you, but at the same time you immediately tear down their victory, pointing out all the ways that they messed up. It should go without saying that no one likes rain on their parade, and quite frankly, post-duel, all the mistakes that happened in the duel are completely irrelevant as the outcome has been decided. No one likes dealing with a salty little bitch. Just take your loss like a man or a woman. Honorable mentions include you intentionally stall and you play burn. That's a joke. Don't flip out at me, you freaking toxic burn player, you. And finally, to our numero uno, you cheat. Now, let me just point out, I'm not talking about unintentionally cheating where you do plays that are illegal not knowing that you couldn't do something, because that is honestly happened to just about every single player who's ever played in a competitive event, or even when you jokingly do it when you're playing with friends or like I do in live streaming. In this case, it's mainly done for laughs and giggles, pretty much for the lulz. I'm talking about when you stack decks, draw extra cards, and other hard cheating methods done at premier events to gain a distinct advantage over your opponent so that you can obviously win. I said earlier that being a scammer or stealing cards is one of the hardest reputations to get rid of in Yu-Gi-Oh! Well, being a cheater is without a doubt the #1. Hell, just think about popular characters from the anime like Maximilian, Pegasus, and Bandit Keith. I bet one of the first things that you associate with these characters is habitually cheating in duels. It's the same premise in real life Yu-Gi-Oh! As well, and it should be pointed out that once you get this reputation for being a cheater, competitive players will lose all respect for you and they'll probably never actually look at you again the same. So, you guys let me know what you thought of this list. Are you a toxic duelist, or have you been toxic in the past and you're trying to improve? Whatever the case, leave it in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. As always, subscribe if you have not already. Turn on that notification bell for daily videos.
Man, you're as predictable as you are brainless.